Greetings and welcome to Off the Cuff episode 66, Viewer Comments. I do viewer comments commentary every few months when I have enough comments to where I feel like it's enough to dedicate an episode to, and boy, have I got a lot. This is the most I've ever had, actually. Pretty much as the result of this episode 63, Cobain murder, which is at 8,063 views. That's a lot for me because look at these other numbers, 38, 65, 56, 35. I mean, this one kind of blew up, and I'll talk about my theories as to why in a moment. But I just like to thank you, my viewers, for watching, for caring about what I do here, for agreeing, for disagreeing, for spreading it, spreading the word to your friends. I hope that it's educational, makes you think maybe, and is ultimately positive in some way. Now, in a recent video, I was talking about my anticipation of hitting 500 subscribers. Well, after that Cobain video, I actually shot up to 600. So that's really cool, even though I'm pretty sure at least half of these are probably AI bots. They're probably not real. I talk about that a lot, but I don't want you actual humans out there to think that I don't believe you're there. I know that some of you are human. I just don't know how many. But I am very thankful to you humans out there for existing and watching, even if you don't comment or whatever, even if you're not a subscriber, you're just lurking. That's cool. I don't do this for the money. I do this, to communicate to you, whoever you are out there. So it is appreciated that you pay attention. If you do want to comment, you know how to do it. You can just comment on any of my videos. If you have a, Gmail account, or if you don't have a Gmail account, you just want to email me, you can email me at tinfoilhatfashion@protonmail.com. This should be in the description of all my videos. All my videos also has a link to my Rumble page, which I encourage you to go do and support a different platform. And if you'd like to donate, which I would very much appreciate, you can click this link here, buymeacoffee.com, tinfoilhatc. I think the reason this Cobain murder video has gone sort of viral is simply because of the topic. As I've explained before, there is a very strong will out there on the internet to control the narrative around Kurt Cobain's death, mostly because so many of the fans believe that Kurt was murdered and that Courtney was involved. So I think the Google algorithms or whatever were triggered by the fact that I started talking about this Joseph Burns video that was put out by Who Killed Kurt, a channel on YouTube, which I think is probably connected to the Courtney camp. That may not be true. I could be wrong, but that's just kind of the vibe I get. I feel like they're trying to co-opt the whole, Who Killed Kurt conversation. They're trying to hijack it. And anyway, we'll look at some of the comments, and how I feel about all that will come out through that process. Now, in this video, Off the Cuff, episode 63, Cobain murder, I read an article by Gateway Pundit, which is pretty dense, has a lot of information in it, even though it's fairly short. And there is mention of a book that's in the works. Well, apparently that book, as far as I understand, is supposedly written by Joseph Burns, the guy who I show snippets of him being interviewed in this video. And you can find that video easily, or find those videos. I believe it's the Who Killed Kurt YouTube page that hosts all that, and the people behind that, someone named Michelle and some other people, they seem to be behind the whole Joseph Burns thing.
Joseph Burns put out a new book where he names ML and gives full account.
I'm guessing that's Mark Lannegan. So here it is. It's on Amazon. I'm guessing this is it. To Kurt, I'm Sorry, paperback. You can get it for $23.74. I would read it, but I'm not, this may sound weird, but I'm not that interested. I feel like I already kind of know what's in it because I've watched the interviews. There might be some really fascinating information there. I don't know. I don't trust it at all, really. This whole, Joe Burns thing, there's just a very, for me, an untrustworthy vibe about the whole thing. So this book is 51 pages. That doesn't sound like very much. And the reviews are mostly bad. There aren't that many. This person is saying that it's not even Joe Burns himself who wrote it. Joe never said Mark Lannegan or Daniel Clint Rich were present that night. I don't know. There's just all these rumors. And this person said it's an honest account of what happened to Kurt Cobain. This person said, I do not recommend buying this. There's this divisive sort of community surrounding this whole topic. And I don't know how useful any of it is, really. I mean, part of me feels like I'm just contributing to the white noise by making a video like this. But what I try to do is I step back and I try to look at the thinking behind the reactions to something like this. What do they want me to think, and why would they want me to think that? Those are the kinds of questions that I ask, and I find those to be useful, more useful than trying to argue about, well, Mark Lannegan wasn't really there, or was he? Or, this guy is not valid because he's into Nazism, or those kinds of topics. I don't feel like really are productive. They don't really help anything. I kind of feel like when we do that, that's exactly where they want us. And when I say they, I mean the ones responsible for these psychological operations designed to direct what we think and what we believe about Kurt Cobain's death. And this person, Bandy Kootbach, said,
so what was the Allen wrench thing about then? Didn't El Duce name him and end up dead? Is that all a past theory now?
The Allen wrench thing, I'm sure most of you have heard it. People saying that Allen wrench, killed Kurt or whatever. And Allen, a guy who seems to be Allen Wrench, was putting out weird videos for a while, going, yeah, I killed him, and I don't know what to make of all that. El Duce was on the movie Kurt and Courtney and flat out said that Courtney offered him money to whack Kurt, and shortly thereafter, El Duce got hit by a train. So, I don't think you have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out what happened there. Andrew Bowen, 6875, said,
you can't murder someone who's already dead. If someone shot him while dead, then it's surely a crime, but it's not murder.
I guess this is a reference to the fact that Kurt had too much heroin in his body to even have lifted up the gun. He would have been too high.
The popularity of this video is equivalent to the secrecy that power demands for its security.
That's kind of an interesting comment. I don't really know what to make of it, but it did make me think a little bit, so thank you.
Collectivism as you've described.
Okay, so this is a comment on the Charlie Kirk video I did.
Collectivism as you described it is also called groupthink. It's very real, and in this case, a deliberate result of social engineering.
I was talking about collectivism because I think this applies to just about every video, including this conversation about Kurt. There's this idea that, there's a group of people that start talking about something and they start agreeing on certain aspects. And the next thing you know, certain members of that group, they're faced with contradictory information, and rather than consider it or look into it or even admit that it's valid, they'll go against it purely because, they don't want to go against the group think, because the collective is more important than the individual. In fact, I think some people in their brain have themselves convinced that the truth actually is what I feel like believing, what my group believes. That's the truth. If you show me, documents or proof, and even if it's valid, I'm not going to acknowledge that as the truth because it goes against what, my collective believes, which is a really scary concept when you think about it. I was speaking to someone the other night who very much dislikes Charlie Kirk, and she kept saying, oh, he talks over people, and he's mean, and blah, 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 and he shouldn't talk over people. And I'm like, so your problem with him is that he talks over people. I mean, does that mean he should have been shot? He should have been assassinated? I mean, you really think it's okay for someone to get assassinated because you think they're rude and talk over people and maybe don't like gay people or something? I mean, which I don't think that's true about Charlie Kirk, but we don't need to get all into that. I just think people are so petty. Like, where's your humanity? This man got assassinated in front of his children. If we can't all sit there and just go, yeah, that's terrible. I mean, there's something very wrong with our society and our ability to talk and have dialogue. Ritual Flip commented on my Starbucks video.
Pretty sure it isn't even coffee. The same goes for Costa.
But you can watch the video and I'll tell you all what I think about all that there. Codex 911. I hope you all watch this movie. I think it's still free over on Rumble on the Badlands page. It's the best September 11th video I've ever seen. And that's something I've actually looked a lot into. So I don't say that lightly. It'll blow your mind and probably piss you off, make you really angry, and might make you cry too. I cried in it a little bit. All right.
Joseph is clean from heroin now thanks to the investigation and donations.
This is someone commenting on the Cobain video. Joseph Burns is the guy we talked about earlier who did the interview. And I don't know how you know that, Taterbug9389, but that's great if he is clean. There's questions about the donations, that he was using like some kind of Nazi sympathizing symbolism where he was accepting donations. Again, I mean, do I really need to comment on all that? I mean, who really cares? You know, what we need in the Kurt Cobain case is what I believe Tom Grant has been asking for. Just the case just needs to be reopened, and it needs to be reclassified as undetermined. And the evidence is already there. There's already enough evidence that we can all look at right now that we've known about for 10 plus years. I don't know how the process works, how you get a county to reopen a case, but obviously there are gatekeepers sitting around still to this day blocking that from happening. I don't know what overcomes that, but I don't think it's arguing about whether Joseph Burns is a Nazi or not, or whether he's telling the truth or not. I don't think that gets us anywhere. This person said,
"Isn't it all fake?"
And I said, yes, always a good question to ask. It is. I don't take anything for granted. When I see a picture of a ship in outer space, I go, is that a real picture? I go, is that really the Earth? How come we never went back to the moon? What's up with that? So we don't need to get into any of that. It's kind of interesting when you think about how much we believe based on just what we're told and pictures we see and things that we read in books. We just think it's real, but we don't really have a way to double check a lot of this stuff. We just go on hopefully on common sense, and follow the best information we can. Keep an open mind, and don't close ourselves off to new information or information that might contradict what we already believe.
My favorite part is how everyone forgets the leading folks behind the murder theory have been profiting off that theory.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of just saying, is this fake? Someone puts out a video and says, "Oh, this person just came out and they've got new information about Kurt Cobain." Obviously you want to sit there and go, all right, well, does this make sense? Who is this person saying this? What is their reputation? What else have they done? Just basic stuff before just immediately going, ooh, that's so exciting. It must be real because I'm excited about it, or I'm becoming fascinated. And you just jump down a rabbit trail and just accept it all because it's entertaining, not because you necessarily believe it's true.
Freedom of press relinquishes any sort of power Courtney Love has over this investigation, like it or not. The truth will come to light one day.
I hope so.
The grunge psyop was intended to clip my generation's wings, and it was successful. We were already mostly under-nurtured latchkey kids, a small generation. I never believed Kurt did himself in, and bands like Alice in Chains made the psyop a little too obvious. I didn't even mention all the LSD we all had back then.
Sometimes I wonder if the grunge movement was a government psychological operation.
So this is echoing, a lot of what I've said on my videos. So, part of me says, right on, I'm getting through to people. Other people are thinking the same way. Another part of me wonders if this is AI that's just riffing off of things I said and trying to make it sound genuine. For what reason? To co-opt the conversation, to guide it. Bots and algorithms aren't always going to say things that are contrary to what I'm saying or what someone else is saying. Sometimes they want to blend in and they want to sort of camouflage themselves and then subtly guide things in a direction.
I don't know. He said he'd done videos on this before and looked into it, but doesn't really know who Jessica Hooper is, which is somebody I believe holds the key to this. She refused many times to really speak on things, but has self-admitted to be one of the last people to talk to Kurt.
Well, why don't you go into detail? What is Jessica? How is Jessica Hooper the key? What key does she hold? A lot of these people or bots or whatever that make these kind of jeering comments, or they never go into detail. They'll make a criticism, but they won't go into detail. And I just reminded this person or bot that the focus of the video was the Burns interview, not the whole Cobain case. It wasn't intended to be any sort of exhaustive review of the Cobain case, hence the title Off the Cuff, as I explained earlier.
Coincidentally, Dave Grohl also disappeared to Ireland afterwards.
That was an interesting comment. I didn't know that. it is a little strange and out of context because I feel like this person is actually referring to Mark Lannegan in a way, which is a different video. It's a little bit out of place, I think, on this video here, unless I'm just not getting the context. But Mark Lannegan moved to Ireland just before he died, and we never got a cause of death. To this day, the Wikipedia entry says that a cause of death was never given. In Lannegan's book, Leaving California, he does kind of get a little bit into why he moved to Ireland, but I still feel like it's surrounded by a little bit of mystery. And so I just thought it was interesting that Dave Grohl also disappeared to Ireland at one point.
He might be dead, in fact, but I wouldn't super count on it. Kurt is a small piece of a much larger deception. Let's always try to circle back to the fact that C Love's dad is CIA, right?
Watch my series Acid Music Mindcrime, which I think I linked it in this video now. Go watch those. I go into Hank Harrison, I think, more than anyone else ever has. And I find it pretty fascinating, but perhaps not for the reasons that you'd think.
Tom Grant doesn't care to help reopen this case. Soaked in Bleach is about 75% true. What an idiot. He's hiding a lot.
I think this is part of the co-opting the narrative angle. In other words, the Courtney Love psyop algorithm narrative control operation is very anti-Tom Grant. Now, I don't have super strong feelings about this, but I trust Tom Grant just based on everything I've read on his webpage, everything he said over in history. No one's really given me a reason not to trust him. And here's another example. 25% of Soaked in Bleach isn't true. Well, tell me what happened. Give me some examples of, what makes you say Tom Grant doesn't care and, how much of Soaked in Bleach is false. And of course, no response. That was 12 days ago. This happens over and over again. People making criticisms, but not giving any detail.
Have you heard of the YouTube page, Who Killed Kurt?
Well, yes, I have. Many of you keep mentioning it. And in fact, someone emailed me telling me to watch it. So again, I think the algorithm is set to funnel people to Who Killed Kurt, because that's where the narrative surrounding Kurt Cobain is supposed to be controlled. It's probably all part of the Courtney Love narrative control psyop.
They are doing heaps of good work and have done an amazing job getting evidence and testing the shotgun, all the talk.
Again, you can pile on all the evidence you want, but it doesn't matter unless you are able to get into that courtroom and make something happen.
mg/L, not mg/I. It means milligrams per liter.
Yes, I was aware of that when I was doing the Chris Cornell video, when my head was, when I was knee deep in all that stuff. But it's been a while since I've looked at a toxicology report. I couldn't remember what the abbreviation was. It was an off-the-cuff episode, so I just literally read it the way it looked, mainly out of laziness. So I appreciate the fact that you people are making corrections, or bots, or whoever you are. I appreciate that you're crossing my T's there. I like that. And it's interesting to note, too, that certain drugs or substances will change form after they've traveled through the system, and there's different terminologies. This person's addressing that, saying heroin turns to morphine in the bloodstream. So these are important things to pay attention to when you're really getting into the nitty-gritty of a toxicology report or an autopsy. You really want to be, understand exactly what you're reading before you try to go and make an assumption or make a point about something. Because if you don't understand the terminology, you don't understand exactly what's being said, you might start acting on the wrong assumptions or incomplete information.
Kurt's success was fueling a lot of people's drug habits, not to mention Courtney's. When he started talking about getting out, there was a lot of mad, worried junkies for whom the free party was looking to be over. When you stir in divorce litigations, including huge sums of money, an actual human being named Francis, for the money Nirvana were making, anything's possible.
This is so fucked up. I always knew since I was a kid that he was murdered.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just get a gut feeling, but then you start hearing other people talking about it, and then you start seeing all this stuff on the internet. And I just think the problem is, especially when you're young and you're just getting into something like this, don't just take all that stuff at face value just because you've already bought the idea that Kurt was murdered. You may be onto something, you may be on the right track, but it doesn't mean that anyone who's talking about it and agreeing with you is automatically telling you the truth. they may be trying to lead you in the wrong direction. So just be very discerning when reading and watching any information about this topic. If you care about the truth. If you don't care about the truth, then just ignore everything I just said.
I believe the CIA and Courtney murdered Kurt in a ritual, as well as wanting to change the music scene because he was too rebellious.
I'm leaning more towards the RJL theory, the Reich J Lam theory, which is my name for a theory that has been around a long time, that famous people, especially in the entertainment business, a sacrifice needs to be made for their fame and fortune. And sometimes I think it really is that simple. It doesn't mean there aren't other reasons. It doesn't mean nobody's going to try to capitalize, financially. These are very diabolical minds, sometimes amazingly sadistic in the way they do it. And so it's important to remember, I think, that 2 or 3 things can be true at the same time.
Wikipedia also says flat Earth, 9/11, Illuminati, and other conspiracy theories are just that. I don't believe a thing it contains.
That's a comment on Paul and the Eye of Horus. That's kind of a supplement to my series on the memoirs of Billy Shears and the whole Paul is dead thing. That's all very fascinating. I recommend everyone read the memoirs of Billy Shears. It changed my life in a way, the way that I see things. It's that kind of book. But it's 666 pages long. There is no rabbit hole like this one that I've ever found. It's just, if you're into conspiracies, I don't see what beats this one. Christopher Kronk 939 said,
The interviewer's name is Mick Wall.
For your information, he's talking about the interview that's interviewing Queensryche. In this video, in this blog I do about Queensryche, where I try to connect, EMI, the British record label, who also put out the Beatles and Pink Floyd and Iron Maiden and many other bands, and I get into like possible, Nazi, monarchy, propaganda, British invasion kind of connections. If you're a Queensryche fan, I think, and you're into conspiracies, I think this is mandatory watching. If I do say so myself, because I don't think anyone's ever done anything like this on the topic of Queensryche.
Joe looks like RoboCop without the helmet.
Yeah, Joseph Burns doesn't look great. I mean, he looks like an older guy that's done a lot of drugs. He's missing an arm. I mean, I don't know how that happened. I suppose he explains it in his book. That's one of the only things that I would actually be interested to hear about. He's an interesting guy. I don't really know what to make of him. His own band was basically accusing him of lying about even knowing Kurt. And that's on the Facebook page. And actually, I commented on the Who Killed Kurt YouTube page on one of their videos. And I said, how do we know, Joseph Burns really witnessed the things that he said he saw? And then they responded to me right away. They said,
how do we know anything in life?
And I said, well, common sense and, a little bit of research, I thought it was a really weird kind of cop-out answer. It tells me that they've got nothing to really back up what Joe says. We're just supposed to go, oh, this guy seems convincing, so I believe him, I mean, really? That's how naive we're supposed to be about the whole thing?
Joe is from the punk days. A lot of dudes from those days had those tattoos. Kind of like grunge is to flannel shirts. It was just hit back then in the punk scene.
I think that's going a bit too far to say that, Nazism in punk in those days was like flannel to grunge in the 90s. I don't agree with that, bro. I mean, Sid Vicious, I think, dressed up in Nazi attire just to be offensive. It wasn't like I hate Jews and I'm pro-Hitler. It was more like I just want to be offensive. Back then, you could do something really offensive and people didn't want to, assassinate you because of it. I mean, did Charlie Kirk ever do that? No, but nobody assassinated Sid Vicious. So that, in a way, that kind of gives you a perspective of how extreme the divisiveness in society has come, since the 70s and 80s.
Or maybe Joe knows the truth about World War II and the Holocaust.
That sounds like some Holocaust denier stuff to me, but I don't know.
Allen Wrench.
Yeah, the Allen Wrench thing was, I think, probably a piece of disinformation that might have been mixed with something true. I think El Duce does mention Allen Wrench in the famous Kurt and Courtney interview. But, did Allen Wrench do it? Who the hell knows?
Yet another strange piece of the 9/11 puzzle. Thank you. More should watch this.
I agree. Go watch Codex 9/11. Every American should watch it. Everyone in the world should watch it, really. If you want to see what your own government would do to you, or what the powers behind the government would do to you, even in America. April Nelly commented,
The Arthur Ross Gallery at the University of Pennsylvania had an interesting past exhibit that opened on 10/7/23, which featured winged paragliders dropping out of the sky on the cover of the exhibition catalog.
so this person, April Nelly, comments on a lot of my videos and, is very friendly. And I was wondering if April Nelly was a bot. And I think April Nelly is a bot, unfortunately. I think what she, he, it is doing here is, kind of relating a similar topic to what I'm talking about in actually a pretty brilliant way. I had no idea. I looked at this up, this Arthur Ross Gallery thing at the University of Pennsylvania. It is very creepy. The October 7th thing, the paragliders that, supposedly Hamas attacking Israelis. If you know about that whole story, this is worth looking at. It is pretty creepy. And it is kind of related to the video, because what I talk about in the video is this art troupe called Gelatin that did this weird art project inside the World Trade Center just about a year before the attacks, just a couple floors down from where the first plane hit. So while the comment is interesting and shows definitely some thought associating it with the October 7th thing, I think this is ultimately the result of artificial intelligence. I asked April, are you an AI bot? The answer was,
I am not a bot. Do you have a grid of images where I could click everything that is not a bot?
That's what really gave it away. Like, who says that? I mean, if someone insists you're a bot, you're going to go, screw you, pal. Who are you calling a bot? I said, all right, well, why don't you email me and explain how you are not a bot or an algorithm, and that should put this all to rest. And the reason I said that is because all the places where I list my email, I don't post them as links. So you can't just click on them. You have to actually copy and paste it or type it in to your email address bar in order to send me a message. So that's actually a pretty good anti-bot mechanism. Although I have gotten emails from what I believe to be artificial intelligence. In fact, the one I got recently telling me to go check out Who Killed Kurt, I suspect that might have been a bot or just a person who's whatever, part of that operation. But April did not email me, so that sort of tells me that April is not human.
Don't trust Tom Grant.
And then I said, why not? 2 weeks have gone by, no answer. So that's the thing. You're just supposed to not trust him. We don't have to tell you why. You're just supposed to take our word for it that he's untrustworthy. That just makes me trust Tom Grant even more. So that's backfiring.
Kurt Cobain was a complex and talented person from what I've read about him, and from interviews with people close to him, he was seemingly a harmless guy, and he deserved to live, if he was in fact murdered. To people that mock him and label him a junkie, Kurt had voluntarily admitted himself in a rehab on at least one occasion that we know of, and there is some indication he had hopes of getting clean, distancing himself from some of the toxic people around him.
That part I believe is true. I believe he was trying to get clean. In fact, even Joseph Burns, I think, goes that direction a little bit in his narrative.
Who saw Kurt on the 3rd? I know Callie and Jessica saw Kurt, and I know Dylan, Joe, and Bonita have all claimed to see Kurt's dead body before he was found in the greenhouse. Do some research about some of the people at Kurt's house. They all have interesting backgrounds.
I tried to sort of do that, in the initial video. I didn't go way into everybody, but there was a couple people in there that it was hard to find information about. It gets a little old when people say, yeah, you should look into this, or, so-and-so said this, or you just sort of make statements that we're supposed to believe are true, but you don't provide links to where I can verify that, or a book I can read, or don't just make statements. I mean, you can. I'm glad. Thank you for commenting. I don't mean to sound like I don't mean to be an asshole here, but, we all want justice for Kurt here, ultimately, right?
I bet his owners did it, record label people. They knew Kurt couldn't maintain that career. Was worth way more money dead. The love of money is the root of all evil.
I think there's probably an aspect of that in there. The whole Geffen angle and the Lollapalooza and the $9 million at stake and that whole narrative there.
Mark died through complications from COVID. It's been known from day one how he died. His body was trashed through his own hand through the years. He got COVID, end of story.
So this is a perfect example of making all these statements but not backing it up with anything. I can say anything I want. I can say Mark Lannegan, grew angel wings and flew up into the sky and flew into the sun and disintegrated like Icarus, I mean, I can say that, but it doesn't mean anything if I don't back it up with something. So I responded with a quote from Wikipedia. Lannegan died at his home in Killarney on the morning of February 22nd, 2022, at the age of 57. No cause of death was revealed. I posted this, that was on Wikipedia the day that I replied to this. So I'm not saying Wikipedia knows everything, but I'm saying, if you're going to make statements as if, oh, everyone knows this, well, do they? Wikipedia doesn't know it. So, do you know better than Wikipedia? Why don't you go over there and correct the entry and put the source where you got that information and help us all be a little more educated about the topic.
It was ruled a suicide few minutes after he was found.
Much like the Chris Cornell case, the thing was ruled a suicide the same day before forensics were conducted, before anything, which, Kate, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to see that there's a big problem with that,
Remember, there is no 13th floor.
This is a comment on my 13th floor elevators video, which ties a little bit into the whole mind control LSD thing. So if you're interested in those topics and 60s rock, I highly recommend looking at this video. I don't think anyone's ever delved into 13th floor elevators on the level that I have here. And that's a very interesting comment because as much as I go into that video, I didn't even think of that. Like, oh, there's no 13th floor, so does that mean there is no band? 13th floor, like, are they saying there is no band? I just think that's an interesting angle, interesting observation that somehow went over my head, even though I spent months researching that. So thank you for that comment, Ritual Flip.
Tom Grant doesn't like Joe Burns because Joe puts Tom at the house time of the murder. Also, it doesn't matter if Joe Burns is a Nazi sympathizer. It doesn't take away from the fact Kurt was murdered.
And then I said, where does Joe say Tom was at the house during the murder? And then 2 weeks went by and it's still crickets. So it's another example of screw Tom Grant. I can't tell you why he sucks, but I'm just going to tell you. As far as Joe Burns saying Tom was at the house at the time of the murder, I don't know where he says that, if he said it. In the interview, he says PI. He keeps using the phrase PI. There were PIs there.
If they, Burns and others, knew there was PI creeping around, why would someone risk a shotgun blast or attempt a murder in any regard?
The whole PI thing is weird, period, if they were even there. But again, we're taking Joseph Burns' word for it. Who else said PIs were there? Nobody that I know of.
Yeah, the Seattle PD at the time was worthless. They should be ashamed of themselves.
I'd have to agree with that.
Courtney did it.
Courtney's dad, Hank Harrison, wrote a book called Love Kills: The Assassination of Kurt Cobain. And in that book, he repeatedly gives the caveat that he's not saying Courtney physically murdered Kurt, but he basically says she was involved. So whatever. I mean, take Hank Harrison with a grain of salt. Watch my video series, Acid, Music, Mindcrime, if you want more on that topic.
Tom Grant has shown himself to be a barrier to justice in this case. I don't know whether it's his ego, incompetence, or whether...
Okay, again, what has Tom Grant done to be a barrier to justice? Like, give some examples. It's just basically, I don't like Tom Grant. I don't like Tom Grant. Screw Tom Grant. That's why I sort of joked. I said, how do you really feel about Tom Grant? It's like, all you're saying is, I hate Tom Grant. And that's what I was responding to. They don't give any reason. So that's what tells me these are all fake.
WKK are grifting.
That's who killed Kurt.
They have stolen most of their evidence off other people.
Unfortunately, I tend to agree with that, but if I'm honest with myself, I haven't looked at enough of the videos to really be able to say that. But that's just the kind of the general feeling I get, is that it's, again, part of the narrative control from the Courtney side of things.
I believe Joe. Usually when you're high, you forget what you're saying or get off topic. I think Joe knew what had happened, and I think he knew what Courtney was like, so he showed off his Nazi symbols to intimidate.
I don't think that makes any sense, but that's cool.
What's wrong with being conservative or far right? And what do political views have to do with solving Kurt's murder? This is all BS.
I'm guessing that what this probably bot is responding to is the fact that I point out how part of the attempt to assassinate Tom Grant's character is, and this was coming from Hank Harrison, I believe. Hank Harrison was trying to paint him out to be like a Nazi and like a far right, kind of anti-gay, sort of try to make him look like this ugly character. That was coming from Hank Harrison when I did the Acid Music Mindcrime series. So that's what I was commenting upon. And this algorithm seems to have picked up on that language and is trying to make like some kind of political statement or take things in some kind of negative political direction. So nice try. Oh, well, whatever, R.
If you want to find a podcast with true evidence and facts regarding the murder of Kurt Cobain, please watch Who Killed Kurt Cobain Official. Excellent videos with true facts, and they are working on getting the case.
So I looked at that page, and the first video on the page I watched, and the whole thing was exactly everything I already knew, like probably 10 years ago. The only new piece of evidence in there, if you want to call it evidence, was the interview with Joseph Burns. So I don't, know how much stock I put in that. Again, I haven't watched every video on that page, but that was the very first one I watched, and it wasn't a very good start for me. I feel like a lot of the people in those videos are play acting as well.
Great VH, bro. Glad I found it through your KC video, hitting the algo, LOL.
Kurt Cobain video. Okay, so this person found my Kraftwerk video, so that's good. My links are working. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to like it right now. And I highly recommend you watch my Kraftwerk video because, again, the discussion I have about Kraftwerk in this video, I don't think anyone's ever had that discussion before. So I hope you watch it because I put a lot of work into it.
That interview was insane. He never claimed to be clean.
Dylan is definitely suspicious.
Yeah, you don't say. I mean, you take a picture like that. How do I outdo Charles Manson with my mugshot? I mean, God, it's kind of an amazing picture. It's almost like a work of art.
Courtney has Kurt's blood on her hands.
Yes, most likely.
Yeah, Courtney is obviously untouchable. The CIA must have not liked Kurt Cobain for whatever reason because he wouldn't go along with the ball rituals and the pedophilia.
I sort of think that's the right way to think. I think it was a satanic ritual. I think he was a sacrifice for the fame and fortune. And later, and for the Foo Fighters to a degree, until Taylor Hawkins had to be sacrificed in order to renew Dave Grohl's fame and fortune, which grew to almost larger proportions than Nirvana, which is I never would have thought that Dave Grohl was going to be like this big, bigger than Nirvana kind of figure, but I think that's what the sacrifices are for. And a second sacrifice would be in order for something like that.
The whole 90s rock radio changed because Nirvana was probably planned by the government then for him to say no to anything he couldn't. You don't get to that level. Look at Lennon, Chris Cornell.
Yeah, so I mean, this person's on the right track, I think. The Dimension channel.
Unfortunately, I'm aware a main part of Joe's story has a fault in it, and now he's selling a book and changed the story again.
One of the reviews in that Amazon page said that they don't even think it's Joseph Burns who wrote the book, that it's someone else. So I don't know. The whole thing just seems like a waste of time, unfortunately, like a shiny object to look at. Ooh, look at this, look over there. Don't look in that other direction where the actual substance is. It's a classic example of that.
Michelle and Rachel talk about their attorney in one of their episodes about a month ago.
I assume Michelle and Rachel are part of Who Killed Kurt channel.
They were talking specifically about this cease and desist letter.
Yeah, apparently there was a cease and desist letter that maybe it was sent to them, that it was sent out to certain media. I assume not just Who Killed Kurt, or maybe not even to them, maybe to other entities.
Their lawyer retired 15 years ago. Michelle and Lisa literally ripped off Gary Cobain. Dude, don't be so daft.
Yeah, I mean, you can get into these little tidbits of information, but, you kind of get lost in it, and I don't know how much it's helping reopen the case. Allen Wrench. There's a Kaya song called Allen's Wrench. For a minute, I was tripping out on that. Like, wow, was Caius talking about Allen Wrench because they knew Cobain was going to get murdered by him? I kind of went down that rabbit hole for a minute, and it led me to a dead end. But every so often, it flashes back up in my head. It's a damn good song, by the way. Allen's Wrench.
She was Callie's girlfriend at the time. CL allegedly bought her a writing career and funded quite a few people to this day.
Responding to one of the individuals that I probably said I don't know who that person is in the video.
Callie DeWitt was the nanny of Frances Bean. That's why they were all there. Cobain was killed.
Okay, yeah, that's why Callie DeWitt was there, but why was everyone else there? They weren't all a nanny, right? So maybe I'm missing what you mean there.
Cobain was killed sometime early April 4th between 12:30 and 2 in the morning.
That's the story. How do you know? What do you mean that's the story? I mean, is that what Wikipedia says? I don't think that's what Tom Grant says. This person's agreeing.
Yep, so was Renee Navarrete. They had a bunch of nannies.
Oh, okay, so they're agreeing about the nanny thing.
It certainly doesn't help Courtney look innocent by trying to stop the case to be investigated properly, and I know if my wife died and years later there's proof she was murdered, I know I'd want the evidence and case reopened.
Tom is usually onto things, but I feel he gets a bit too sidetracked with details about people or situations that take the focus off why everyone is basically here, to find out what happened and who killed Kurt.
I don't think Tom Grant tries to go on tangents for unproductive reasons. His webpage, CobainCase.com, is the most densely full of valuable information regarding this. It's a hell of a lot more densely packed with information and useful for reference than the Who Killed Kurt YouTube page, as far as I can tell.
Joe Burns flat out says Dylan did it.
Yeah, but how do we know? How does Joe Burns know? Like, how do we know Joe Burns isn't just full of shit? How do you know that? Because he was in his band, that means he's right. I mean, that means something. I'm not going to totally discount that, and I don't believe in the interview Joe said that Dylan did it, but he heavily indicates that Dylan, let's put it this way, he implicates Dylan a hell of a lot more than Tom Grant ever did.
Yep, Dylan Carlson and Callie DeWitt both killed Kurt and shot him while he was half alive.
How do you know? Is there a Dragonia? I mean, I can kind of see how you'd put two and two together and come to that conclusion, but I wouldn't mind hearing a little bit more about, what sources you used to derive that information that made you come to that conclusion. The women from WKK are just trying to get the case reopened in Seattle. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, if that's what they're trying to do, then I support it. But I don't know if that's what they're trying to do, really. I guess time will tell, won't it?
CL and D. Geffen planned the whole thing.
Yeah, it could be.
Frances has nothing to do with this, by the way.
I don't know. Has she commented on it? She probably, if you comb through the internet, she's probably got a comment somewhere on it. Or maybe not. I always thought members of Soundgarden might let something slip eventually about their feelings regarding Cornell's death, but they've been dead silent about that topic, and that really is just highly disturbing, the whole thing.
Kurt came upstairs from the basement when he ran into Joe in the kitchen, then was manhandled up to the greenhouse room above the garage. Where's the PI pictures?
Yeah, that's about what the Joseph Burns narrative says, but how do we know? Maybe he's lying. How do we know what Joseph Burns said is true? Who else is corroborating that?
Tom Grant knew from Courtney tapes that Joe and Bonnie were there, but failed to question them and focus only on Callie DeWitt without making a final conclusion.
False. The recording where CL is talking about Joe and Bonnie is in reference to a different house, not the cabin home.
Okay, so this person, I guess, looked into it. Star Wars Satan. Unless these are two bots having a fake conversation that's trying to make us think it's real.
The whole thing is such a mess and convoluted that only a few people really know what happened. No justice will come. The evidence and testimony is so scattered that it has become impossible to trace exactly what happened to anyone who was in the few.
Well, on a level, I agree with this. On another level, I think that's the level they want us to be reduced to. They want us to be so cynical that we just throw our hands up in the air and don't think that it could ever be resolved. I think that's actually the wrong conclusion. While I do understand how you can come to that conclusion. That's when you let cynicism take over. That's where you're going to be coming from.
Don't be mean to Joe. He's been through a lot.
I don't know Joe. I have no idea. All I know is that his own bandmates call him a liar and a Nazi sympathizer. That's about all I know about the guy. So, and I don't think I'm being mean to him. Maybe she's talking to other people commenting on here. I would say I'm someone who really gave him the time of day and really did my best to listen to him. If I don't agree with him, that doesn't mean I'm trying to be mean to him. It just means that I don't believe him. Or I think he's being paid and being used as part of a psyop.
Hot dosing is actually a pretty popular method of taking people out. It happened to Philip Seymour Hoffman and many others.
I don't know much about the death of Philip Seymour Hoffman. I think I looked into it briefly before, about as many years ago, but yeah, he was a great actor. Very sad about that.
Chris Michelson was the one involved. He is the one that hot shotted Kurt, then took off because he thought the cops were coming.
Well, it's someone to look into. Never heard of that person.
Chris Michelson was Caitlin Moore's roommate, which Caitlin herself said Kurt was at her apartment during the last days.
Again, stuff to look into.
Don't believe Grant, my man.
Well, why not? Jason Allen 7042. I mean, everyone wants me not to like or trust Grant, but nobody can give me a reason why. So that just tells me that Tom Grant is correct, and you're all trying to defame his character because you can't defame the information that he puts out there. I don't hear anyone fact checking Tom Grant literally. I just hear everyone going, don't believe him. No, he's not cool. No, not Tom Grant. Like, you don't get anywhere with that. I'm sorry.
The Rome incident was Courtney's first attempt at murder. She roofied the shit out of his drink.
I'm kind of with that, especially when you put it together with what Lannegan said in his book. And I go into that in Lannegan, Cobain, and Other Mysteries. That's a good video to watch if you're interested in this topic. It provides, I think, a pretty good... Again, I don't think anyone else has ever read Lannegan's book and made the insights that I did. I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying I think there's a reason why Lannegan, Cobain, and Other Mysteries is one of my most popular videos, because I think it's one of my best pieces of detective work, honestly. So I would really appreciate if you go watch it if you haven't. I'll put the link in this very video that I'm recording right now.
The shirt was a gimmick.
This is a comment on my Off the Cuff episode 51, Nazi Punks Fuck Off.
You guys gotta let this go. Kurt wasn't murdered. Let him rest and just enjoy his music. Shit.
I'm not even going to say anything. That just makes me laugh. No comment.
Burns is a Nazi, obviously. The thing is, if he was a witness, he's a witness. And did Kurt know this? Doesn't seem like someone Kurt would be friendly with. Kurt couldn't even stand Axl Rose. Maybe he wasn't at the time. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, Joseph Burns is a very weird character because his own band, on their own Facebook page, Aspirin Feast, back in, I think it was 2020, we want nothing to do with Joseph Burns and his hateful rhetoric. Well, what about 10 years ago? Was he a Nazi 10 years ago? I mean, I would be interested to hear the whole story on this. I think it's actually the whole thing is designed to get us stuck arguing about these very things right here, which do nothing to help solve the case. I think that's the point.
People who struggle to keep their feelings out of objective investigations should probably just stay out of it. Even if a witness happened to have a giant swastika tattoo across their entire face, it should have no bearing on...
Okay, so this is part of the whole, if Joseph Burns is a Nazi, that has no bearing on, whether what he's saying is legitimate or not. It's almost like this perspective is trying to twist it to make it sound like the fact that Joseph Burns has, Nazi symbolism tattooed on his head, that somehow that makes him more convincing. Like, that's kind of what I'm getting from this angle a little bit.
Joe's not on street drugs. He was taking methadone for recovery from drugs. That's most likely why he was nodding out.
How do you know, Jimmy Marsh 2489? I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, but how do you know that? You're just making statements. And even if it's true, what does it really matter? I mean, again, Nazi symbols, drugs, no drugs, the guy is making statements that are incredible that we have no idea if he's lying or not. That's what everyone is skirting around. That's what nobody wants to talk about. That's what nobody wants to acknowledge here. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's the point of the Nazi symbolism on his head. Maybe it's just to get us talking about it, to get us going in circles and being unproductive.
You do know Kurt and many in the music industry all do or did use illegally obtained recordings of who is now Kurt's ghost songwriter. Kurt imitated the ghost guitar songwriter, even dressing as a sapper, a person who makes maple syrup.
Well, that's something to read and kind of trip off of and look into maybe. I never heard of that.
You give far too much deference to Tom Grant. He has done some good things, but his credibility has taken a major hit in recent years. I am sure you will be able to find out why.
You're not supposed to back up your own statement. I'm supposed to go out there and back it up for you? Like, is that what you're saying? I just asked, what am I missing about Tom Grant? Elaborate. And, Voila, Truth Seeker never replied. There are other replies, but Truth Seeker 4841, who doesn't really seek the truth, obviously never replied. But oh well, whatever, who responded in another section.
He has been a major hindrance to this case. What has he actually done to advance this? All he does is gatekeep, delay, and attack. Meanwhile, the WKK team are actually gathering a case together.
Okay, so all you're doing, oh well, whatever, all you're doing is confirming my hesitance to take WKK seriously. It's boomer. What you're doing is actually boomeranging. It's making you look worse, is what it's doing. Not to mention you're answering for Truth Seeker 4841. I've noticed this when you're speaking with an AI bot. Sometimes a different AI bot will answer you as if they are the person that was asked the question, which tells you that they're both part of the same brain.
By the way, Soaked in Bleach contains numerous factual errors.
Such as what? Oh, well, whatever are. You don't give any examples. I asked him what factual errors are included in Soaked in Bleach documentary. No answer.
Love Kills, the assassination of Kurt Cobain by Hank Harrison. All you need to know.
I trust Jerry Garcia when he said that, Hank Harrison is basically a complete liar. I trust that. But I would be interested to read the book again just to analyze it and revisit it. Because, Hank Harrison, he's someone that probably lies half the time and tells the truth half the time. So he's if nothing else, an interesting subject to study, which I do thoroughly in my series, Acid Music Mindcrime, which I highly recommend you go watch or read.
1 in 10 people at the scene. I don't want to be your monkey wrench, straight out of Dave Grohl's song.
Yeah, I'm sure there's clues in Dave Grohl's lyrics.
Lannegan had nothing to do with his death.
Well, how do you know, DC5 Dottie? I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying, how do you know with such certainty? And I asked right here. And guess what? DC Dottie never responded because DC Dottie is, unfortunately, probably a bot.
Stupid name, LOL, Aspirin Feast, headache music.
That was kind of an interesting name myself, especially for like a whatever, hardcore, grindcore kind of band. I think it's pretty appropriate, if a bit silly.
Oh, you haven't looked into it much, to be honest. No, you're painfully clueless.
What am I clueless about? What did I miss?
Are you Tom Grant's publicist? The guy is clearly dodgy and a liar.
Blah, 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 blah. No examples of his lying and no examples of his invalidity. I responded, what did Tom Grant lie about? That was 2 weeks ago. No response. Again, it's just a campaign to invalidate Tom Grant, which just makes me believe Tom Grant more. That's all you're doing.
Danny Clint-Rich confession. He states he flew Courtney and Eric Erlandson to Seattle. Courtney was present in the greenhouse for the staging of the suicide.
Okay. It's the first time I heard that.
Joe Burns has ID'd Tom Grant as being present at the property the day of the murder, but on the outskirts. I can't remember who published the video, but Joe clearly points to Tom Grant on a computer screen when asked who is present.
Okay, well, that must be the video I haven't seen.
Kurt's Army has a good article on the Tom Grant worth checking out.
Oh, it'd be nice if you would have put a link, but maybe I'll look it up. Other people can look it up now that I've read that to them.
Even though he is controversial, it is factual that he was friends with Kurt and was at his house quite often. There are pictures of around 93 or 94 at Kurt's house with him, with Kurt.
And then I said, where are these pictures? And guess what? Soul Slip never answered. But my friend, oh well, whatever are.
He was also able to say that he saw Kurt eating a Marie Callender meal late at night, which was backed up by the forensic report.
Yeah, but what if he saw the forensic report already?
Daniel Clint-Rich was the second thumbnail from the top left.
So yeah, I put his name in Google and there were all these pictures and I didn't know which one was him. He was the one I was having a hard time finding anything else out about. So if anyone has any information on Daniel Clint-Rich, I would appreciate if you would just send it to me. Because nobody in this, all of these, 200 plus posts, not one person could tell me exactly who he is and where to get more information about him. Fill me in. I said, who is he? No answer in 2 weeks.
Great research. Mate, respect from UK.
Comment on my 13th floor elevators videos. Thank you so much, Wayne Silverman 3048.
Yes, that Horace, sick eye of the Horace Well Stonehenge Free Festival in the early 70s.
So this sounds like it might be a bot talking because the wording is just very strange. But again, this bot came up with some really trippy stuff. The Stonehenge Free Festival in the early 70s. I looked that up briefly after this bot posted that, and that whole thing is pretty bizarre and worth looking into, and probably worth doing a whole blog about.
I am aware of a lot of the background of Joe coming out due to myself being admin of Facebook groups.
Okay, so why did you put 3 dots after out and then start a new sentence and then put 3 dots again and then the space? I mean, this just screams like AI bot right here.
Def a lot to it, and yes, bit of a mess, unfortunately.
Yes, like your post is a bit of a mess grammatically. Terrapin9 Iffy said, thank you, sir. Glad you watched the video. I put a lot of time and effort into that. I don't believe anyone's ever really approached the Syd Barrett topic from the angle that I do there. So I hope that you share it. I hope more people watch it because I think more people need to think from this angle in terms of tragic figures such as Syd Barrett. Apollyon 911 said, awesome to my off-the-cuff episode 61, Ectolife, which is about these robots giving birth basically to human embryos, growing the babies inside a robot belly. Really scary stuff. And I sort of link this into AI and the Antichrist and all that. It's a topic that's been coming up in various blogs of mine. Again, I'm trying to put links in each video to other videos and other blogs that are related to the topic so you get sort of a bigger picture.
Well, I will credit the young Chinese for their awareness when they created the word Baizio to describe the woke.
I don't know what that means, but that sounds funny. I think I did I looked that up a couple weeks ago. I forgot what it means, but it was an entertaining little dig. Yellow Kang Dex 4904 commented on my flat Earth video.
You should be open to the Earth being flat. The entire globe narrative revolves around our reality universe being the result of random chance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to the idea of flat Earth. There's some very compelling theories. I'm not sure I buy all of them, like, the plasma moon. That's a theory that gets thrown in with this a lot. I don't know if I necessarily prescribe to that, or the moon map theory, which I was going to blog about, but it's just, that one's a little bit too out there for me to dedicate a blog to. But the idea that we are surrounded by a wall of ice that may actually be what we call Antarctica, and that it may just be a flat plane all the way out, I'm on board with considering that. I don't rule it out. And I think that's about it. Have we learned anything new? I don't know. I hope so.